All right, video number 8. I picked up my Harbor Freight motor, got it all mounted in. Now I got to go ahead and pull off the gas tank, the exhaust, and then on this side over here, we're going to pull off the intake, the air filter, and all that plastic down the bottom there. And then we're going to modify the exhaust to come out actually over here, out this way. The muffler will be down here. And then we're going to put a cold air intake on the carburetor to swing it up inside here so that we can keep everything in nice and tight so that we keep the front end narrow when we build the cowling. So I did a few things since the last video. I built some custom running boards, should work out real nice, keep the snow from building up on the running boards when you're breaking trail. I got the seat done on the trailer hitch. I put it's just 1/4-inch plate steel here, and then I welded the ball to that. And then underneath as well, there's another piece of actually not 1/4-inch, 3/16 on both sides, 3/16 steel. Bolted that all through. If you're using the type of drag that I'm using, if you catch a rock, it'll just rip that trailer hitch right out if it's just through the aluminum. So that should hold it. It's worked out pretty good on the other 2 sleds that I built. The other thing I did was, I know in the last video we just kind of finished up the little cowling halo around the front for the cowling to sit in. And since then, I mounted it here. I welded this piece of steel onto that, and then bolted in where the old reverse cable bracket went. And I actually moved that over to here, and I flipped the lever up so it's coming straight up. That way it keeps everything nice and narrow. And this one actually has reverse. So that's reverse right there. And then I also mounted, I welded in a couple of tabs for the lights. One there, one on that side. And the other thing I did was this piece of steel here, I actually welded right into this bar here. And then underneath that, on the back side of this, I welded another piece of steel in there, so it's bolted right down through. And that way that whole shock tower now is going to be held up side to side with this bracket here. So that should definitely give it a little more rigidity. So when you want to start jumping it, it's not going to fall apart on you. Also going to put in the primary, the secondary clutch. We'll get the belt aligned up on that. Like I said, we'll modify the exhaust, the air filter, and then remount the gas tank over in this area here. And then we have a little air impulse diaphragm fuel pump that we're going to install, and a couple other goodies. So I'm going to start by taking everything off the motor, and then we'll get to the clutches. Have clutches installed with the belt. I put the bearings in. I just snugged them up here just to make sure everything's tight. Everything's tight on the other side. The clutch right now moves back and forth, as well as the primary. So what we need to do now is, now you put your clutches in, you want to make sure that your secondary and your primary clutch line up. The way I'm going to do that, I'm going to take a piece of steel. I'm going to push this one all the way to the inside so it's tight on this bearing collar. And then what I'm going to do is make sure you have a nice straight piece of steel. I'm going to put that just like that. Make sure it's touching here and make sure it's touching there, and then just hold it nice and tight to that. And then you can actually slide this over and check it. Actually, a better way to do it is pull it out. That way I can get this down in here a little bit deeper and I get a more accurate reading. But right there, it's touching here, it's touching there, it's nice and tight up here and up there. So you know that your motor is straight with your secondary clutch. And the way you adjust that is once you put the bolts in the bottom, it'll be pretty close, but you have to turn the motor one way or the other. There is a little bit of play in it, so once you get it where you want, then you just snug up all the nuts and bolts underneath. And now is a good time to do that, especially now that you have the belly pan removed on both sides, because you can get up underneath the motor mount and tighten up the 4 bolts. And those are just 2" by 3/8 bolts that I use with some nylon stop washers. So the next thing I want to do is, now that I know this is all straight, and this should be at a 90 with this, because when we did the motor mount, we did the whole frame and square thing. So I'm going to push this all the way to the left. I'm going to take this and just move it. Again, I'm going to hold this tight here and hold this tight there. But I want to just get it on the plane with the belt here, because if it's up here, you can't really see the gap in between. You want to get it as close as possible, flush here and flush here. And then just move your clutch around. Make sure this one's tight in here. And just move your clutch back and forth till the gap looks nice and even all the way down. And you'd be surprised that you can see it's off even just a 30-second. You'll usually pick that up. So once you get that in there, that's still tight. Now we need to figure out what the spacer is going to be in between the clutch and the shoulder on the crankshaft. It's kind of tough to get a tape measure in there. So the way I'm going to do it, I'm going to put a piece of wood, just a piece of 3/4" plywood, and I'm going to hold that right up against the back side of this clutch sheath, and then I'm just going to mark where this shoulder is. There. So then when I get that where it needs to be, I just kind of eyeball it again. So this is going to be the size of the spacer right here. So my spacer is, if you can see that, there's a little mark on there. When I measure right to that mark I made, and that's 5/16. So that's what size spacer I need there. And then on the secondary, you can actually get the tape in close enough where you can see and guess. Not quite exact, but if it's a little short, it's not bad, because you want probably like a 1/16 of an inch of play in there anyway. Right now I'm up against this button, which is a little bit proud of this shoulder here, and I'm getting like 11/16. So I'm going to make this spacer 11/16. So 5/16 on this one, 11/16 on this one, and I'll show you how I make those up. So I used a piece of 1" threaded pipe. You get a black pipe, or you get the galvanized stuff like this. But I use that for my spacers because it's nice and thick. So this is the spacer for here, which is 11/16, and then this is the one for the primary clutch side, which is 5/16. The only problem is they're a little bit loose on there, like that. So what I'm going to do is just take a whiz wheel and just cut it right here and squeeze it back together until I get it to the point where it's snug, but it's not super tight, so you don't have a problem getting them on and off. And then once I do that, I'll just weld right along there, and that's how I make up my spacers. Right, so I have my spacers made up. It's usually, it took like 2 cuts with the whiz wheel. Takes out enough material to make that fit, pretty snug. And just make sure you don't have any welds that stick up on the inside here. then what you'll have to do too after is, because when you close this together, you actually make this whole thing oblong. So you just put it on the ground, this being the ground, and just hit the weld, and that'll push it back in around. So what I'm going to do is pull the primary off. This is working like that. I'm going to put the 5/16 inch spacer right up against that shoulder, and then I'm going to use keyway. The keyway right in there. Put the belt back on. Actually, I'm just going to leave the belt off for now. Just like that. Then what I did on the secondary is I loosened up these 3 bolts, and the same on the other side. And the idea is that to change the belt, all you have to do is pull the shaft out like that. So if you're ever on the trail and you had to do it, the only thing you would have to do is disconnect the chain and then loosen up these set screws. Loosen up these 3 bolts on both sides, and you should be able to pull the shaft right off, and then you should be able to change out the belt. But I've been running this for 2 years. 1 year with this sled, 2 years with the other sled, and I haven't had any issues with the belts. They don't even look worn. So as long as you take your time and you line everything up, I think you should be all right. So this is going to go on like this. And then this spacers, the other thing too is it had the 2 set screws. Just make sure they don't make it inside the keyway here. So you either do it like that or put them even further down on the bottom. And again, this is just a 1-inch keyed shaft that I picked off of Amazon. And it actually was a 3-foot long piece, so I've used this for 3 sleds. It worked out pretty good. It's like $50. So, so I'm gonna slide that through. Make sure this is all greased up in here good, and that's greased, and that's all greased, the whole shaft. That way it'll slide in a lot easier. You shouldn't have to fight it quite as much. And that's going to go there, and then I'll put my spacer in there. I'm going to take my clutch assembly. It might get a little tricky. I'm not going to do it yet, but you have to put the keyway in there and slide the whole thing at the same time. So if you put the keyway down towards the bottom, and put your belt on, you should be able to slide it right through. Good luck doing this if it's 5 degrees outside. So I'm not going to screw with it right now, but I'm going to leave it out for now. Anyway. That's the deal there. Check your primary. Slide it right on there. That should be good. So now you can see where I have the spacer in there. Have the spacer in there. And that side's pretty much tight right down inside here. This the the longer side of the bearing sticks out towards the outside. Same thing on this side as well, just for future. And then the whole bearing assembly goes on the outside of the tower as well as on the outside of the tower on this side. So that's that. What's going to happen is once you run this, like you get it running, you go down the road, you'll be able to see if this belt has any kind of deflection left or right. And if it does, then you can just make up that difference on your spacers. So if the belt is deflecting out to the left, then you're going to have to take a little bit more off of this spacer. If it's deflecting to the right, you're going to have to add to that spacer to bring the clutch back out this way and correct it. But usually if you get a little bit of play in here, I think I'm actually going to grind this one down. It's a little tighter than I want. That'll kind of correct itself too as it shifts through its range of gears. And so get everything snugged up on the primary, tighten back up the bolts on the secondary bearing retainers. Now I'm going to go to making a chain tensioner. So this sprocket here is this one here, it's a 24 tooth, and the one on the top is a 12 tooth. And you get those on Amazon. I'm going to try and list all the links for all these parts that I'm going to throw at you in the next couple of videos, if I can figure it out. So I'll give it a shot anyway. So now we have to make up the chain tensioner, which is going to be this. What's going to happen is this is going to have a pivot bolt down here, and then there'll be a channel for this bolt to go back and forth. That way it'll kind of slide up and down, back and forth like that, and I actually tension up the chain. This one actually sticks out a little further. It's for the other sled that I have. I just took it off for a visual and to give me the measurements on this plate here. But I'll just cut this bolt a little bit shorter here when I weld it on there. All right, so we're going to make up the base plate for the chain tensioner. I'm going to make it up out of two pieces. This one's going to be 2.5 by 1.5 inches. This piece is actually a little wider than it needs to be, but it's 1.5 inches now and by 1.25 inches. So I'm going to weld that up like that. And then after, I'll just cut that extra piece off. All right, so the plate's all welded up. I have two holes drilled. This one's going to be the pivot, and this one's going to be the arc. And then this is where the bolt with the idler sprocket is going to be welded to. So you know, it was like 1.5 inches by 2.5. That hole's up like maybe a 1/2 inch. Actually, that's 3/8. And then this piece is 3/4 by like 1.5 inches. And that hole is pretty much in the center. It doesn't matter. I mean, what you're going to do is we're going to bolt this in through here, and then we're going to figure out where to make the channel for this bolt. And in order to do that, we have to weld the idler sprocket on to this to find out where the best place is to put that. So I have to get the measurement from the side of this adjuster to the center of the chain, which is 2 3/8. So now I need to take my idler, go from the center, 2 3/8, and cut this bolt right here, and then weld it on. And so the piece is all made up, the bolt's welded on. Got my 2 3/8 from the center of this sprocket to the face of this. So now what I have to do is put this in here and just figure out where I want to put this bottom hole. So I'm just going to put it where I get enough room to swing it this way. I guess there's some of the weld up here, so I'm going to go a little bit low with it. So I'm going to just go ahead and mark it right there. That's where I'm going to drill my hole, 5/16 hole, and that'll be for the pivot bolt. So it's bolted in now. It's moved back and forth. So I'm going to put it, this is a brand new chain, so I'm going to put it so it's tight, super tight. And I'm just going to back it off a little bit and mark that hole. And as this chain stretches, you're going to want to be able to move it in. So I'm going to pull the chain off now, and then I want to bring this hole down to about here somewhere, and then I just want to mark a series of holes along the arc, and then I'll have to drill them out and then just take a grinder and grind them all out, and that way I'll be able to just slide that back and forth. So I got the master off, so that's where we're going to start. Pop this off, chain off. So here's our starting hole, and we're going to want to go, maybe about that far. As the chain stretches, we'll be able to take up the tension. I'll just put that in there, draw that. So I'm just going to drill a series of holes along this line here, this arc, and then connect them all. And that way, once you tighten that up, you can slide it that way. Good to go. So I drilled 4 holes, and then I just took a little grinding bit and try to connect them as best as I could. I'm going to take a 1/4 inch drill with a 5/16 drill bit. Oh, wrong one. Wrong one. All right. Put it in the hole. And then just try and hopefully when I put a bolt in there, it should slide back and forth like that. All done. These lined up. I used 1/2 inch bolt for this and 1/4 inch for the plate. Make it good and beefy. That way it's not going to bend. If these chains, these sprockets ever travel back and forth, sometimes you have to readjust this maybe. So I left myself some room with some threads there. And then I can go ahead and just cut this off here. And that's it for that. And I'm going to go ahead and start doing the cold air intake on the carburetor. So this is a cold air intake I got off of Amazon. It'll fit the 420cc Predator motor or the 459. Comes with the air filter, this little aluminum spacer, and it also comes with a little choke hold down. So what I've seen a couple of guys do, because two people in the area actually have built these, and what they did is instead of tapering the front end in like this, they actually just came straight out with their cowling, which is fine. It's still within, it's still within the ski stance. It was, 20, whatever, 27 outside to outside. But the problem is when you come into trees, if I was sticking out here, I would have hit a lot of trees, going on edge and things like that. So I prefer to taper it in like this. And the only problem with that is if you just go straight here, you can put this on, and you can just put your cold air intake on there. And you have enough room. If you're coming straight out this way, you actually have enough room for that cold air intake like that. So it's definitely a lot easier. But again, I prefer to taper it in because I've gotten in some really tight trees. And if I was sticking out here, when you get it on the edge on the side hill or something, it's definitely going to hit the tree. So I'm going to go with that. So what that does is it opens up a whole new can of worms. So I had to go out and buy this 2.5-inch silicone boot. I think it's 2.5. Let me double check. Yeah. Yeah, it's 2.5. So I have to finagle this thing in here onto this piece here and just kind of try to get this whole cold air intake just to kind of roll, this way here. So it's up out of the way of the cowling. So first thing we're going to have to do, because these bolts stick out way too far past this red aluminum spacer, I'm going to go ahead and bolt those in like that. And then I'm going to stuff a rag in here, make sure nothing can get in there. And then I'm going to take a whiz wheel and I'm going to cut those right off there. So the first thing I'm going to have to do is just kind of figure out, so if this red piece is going this way, I kind of want to put somewhat of a cut angle on this here. But I don't want to cut too much of the elbow off either. So I think I'm going to start back here and just nibble away at it. Just keep cutting. So what I'm trying to do is make a bit of an angle cut on that. You can see that. But I also want to try to keep it as flat as possible here. So there's a little bit of chunk I got to take out of right there. But I think once I get that on like that, and then I do the same thing here with the natural angle of the cold air intake, it'll get me up to where I want to be. And then I just have to make a little metal sleeve to go inside to tie these two together. So I'm going to clean that up a little bit. And then I'll try and get another cut on this at a bit of an angle that way. So the other issue I'm running into is the boot's hitting the brake line right here. And I don't want it to rub, because after a while that'll end up rubbing a hole right through the boot. So I'm going to try to bend this line down and get it a little bit tighter to this brake caliper. So I just got to tweak it a little bit. So maybe I'll put a screwdriver in between and just kind of bend it a little bit. Obviously, we don't want to break it. Or kink it. It's a little better. See, I'm still hitting right in here. So I'm going to try to bend that a little bit tighter down to the brake caliper. Almost kinked it. Still hitting a little bit. I just did want to mention that this is a 45-degree elbow. So I was able to get that brake line out of the way underneath. It's not hitting on anything now. So the next thing I need to do is try to figure out where this is going to go in. So again, I'm going to go at an angle kind of like this. But I want to leave myself enough room on that short point to be able to get a metal sleeve in there. So I'm going to start back here and work my way that way. You just have to be patient. You can always take more off, but you can't add it back on. So just take your time. I found an insulation knife works pretty good. As long as you just kind of let the knife do its work, you should get a nice straight cut out of it. Definitely better than a utility knife. Just don't cut the brake line underneath. Yeah, that's much better. Nice clean cut. Looks pretty clean that way. That's the way to go for sure. I think that's going to work. So just like that. Just have to make up the little spacer for inside there. It's not rubbing. I mean, it might rub when it vibrates, but I can always put a piece of metal down there to make sure it doesn't wear through the hose, the boot itself. And while you're doing this, you want to keep a rag stuffed in there to keep any crap that you're cutting and all that stuff from falling into the carburetor, which will eventually work its way into the motor. So I have a piece of exhaust I picked up down at AutoZone, VIP, or whatever, and it's 2 5/8, and I want 2 1/2. Actually, it's just a little bit too big. So I'm going to do the same thing I did with the spacer. I'm just going to cut it. I'm going to cut that to probably like maybe 1.25 inches, enough to fit inside there, and then give enough. Actually, I just cut it right on this shoulder, and then cut it that way and squeeze it together till I get the desired 2 1/2. Weld it, and that'll be my spacer for inside there. Piece all welded up. 2 1/2. Make sure there's no chunks of metal in there or anything like that. And just go ahead and slip that in there. This sleeve, he gave us some pretty beefy clamps. I can't find it. Anyway, that's going to go. Oh, here it is. So I think that I can actually put this one clamp on and clamp both these pieces. So it's going to slide over like that. And I'm actually going to take the angle of this here and kind of turn it back down so it's not sticking up so high here. Once I get it on there, turn it down a little bit. And then I'll put this clamp right over both of these. And I think that'll look pretty good. So the other thing you got to do, so you're redoing the cold air, you're doing the cold air intake, which is introducing more air into the engine, and you're also doing an exhaust upgrade, which even introduces even more air. So on the main jet of this, what I did is I just drill it out with a 3/64 inch drill bit, and it seems to be the perfect size for it. Doesn't run too rich and it doesn't run too lean. You can mess around with jets all you want, but the sizes on them are, I don't even think they're much really different between the numbers they give you. So I find that's what works best for me. And there's actually a guy on YouTube who builds golf carts with these motors, and that's what he does as well. And that's where I got the idea. So the other thing I wanted to mention was the pull start. I'm actually going to pull this off and flip it around so that the cord is underneath. And this one, I'm actually going to run it up in here and put the pull cord over in this area, so you can actually start it without pulling the hood off. I mean, it has electric start, but if for some reason your battery dies, you got to pull the hood off the other two that I built and pull start them. So I think on this one, I'm going to go ahead and try to put the pull start over here so I don't have to take the hood off. Just be kind of nice little convenience thing. So I'm waiting for my exhaust from Amazon. So as soon as that comes in, I'll make another video. I'm going to do the exhaust, build the cowling, and probably mount the gas tank. And that, I think, is kind of going to be it for, everything that I guess you would need to figure it out. And even other than that, it's just, wiring and things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to upload all this stuff, get a video made up to this point, and then when my exhaust comes in, probably at the end of the weekend or something, I could probably get another video out. So see you then.